let's take a look at what the answer should have been. So if we start with number 1, we can see that it has a -2, which means all of the f of x values we're going to subtract 2. And we know that f of x is really y. So every y value is going to be moved down 2. So let's start over on this side over here. And let's move that down 2. And let's take our x-intercept over here, right here, and let's move that down 2. And then let's take our y-intercept here and move it down 2 to here. And if we take our max point and move that down, it's a little bit below the x-axis. And then if we take our x-intercept and move that down to, we're down here, and then we just go ahead and connect those together. And if we look at the main points, I will look at a y-intercept a little above -1. I will look at the peak to be a little bit below the x-axis, and then maybe I'll look over here at my final point to be almost 2 down. So let's go look for that. So none of the first 3 are below the x-axis, and none of the next 3 are below the x-axis. So let's keep looking down. And we find that we have y-intercept about 1, a little bit below the x-axis, and then we're over here about 2. So I'm going to say that number 1 is letter H. We know that anything inside with the x value is going to be the opposite. So this is 2 times x, so we're really going to divide x by 2. So on our graph, anywhere we have a point, we can divide the x value by 2 and then regraph it. So if I'm going to start at the x-intercept over here, if I take 1, 2, 3, 4, a little over 4.5, divide that by 2, I get a little over 2 1/4, so we're going to be somewhere over here. And then if I take this max point up here, it's at 2, so I'm going to go ahead and move that over a little bit over here. And then I'm going to take half of the x-intercept, which is 0, so this point actually stays where it is. And then if I'm going to take this x-intercept, take half of 1 1/4, I'm going to get about 0.75, about right here. So my graph is actually going to go up pretty steep and then come back down. And when I look at the graphs below, I'm going to look at 1, I've got something close to 2. I've got a y-intercept of 1, and then over here a little over 2, I'm going to be at 0. So 1, and then close to 2, and then a little over 2. So I go down a little bit, and I look, and I see that here's a point where I cross the y-intercept is 1. At 1, I'm about 2, and a little over 2, I have an x-intercept. So for number 2, I'm going to say that it is letter B. In number 3, we have 2 things going on, and we had talked about doing flip, stretch, move is our order. So we're going to start with a negative y, because f of x is really y, so negative y. So anywhere I have a y value, I'm going to flip it. So let's look at this y value is a little over 3, so I'm going to flip it to the top. And this y value at the x-intercept is 0, so that's going to stay there, as well as the one on the right hand side. Those 2 x-intercepts still stay at 0, because a negative 0 is still 0. And if I take this point right here, where our max is, and it's a little almost 2, so I'm going to go down to a little close to 2 on the bottom. And this is our graph when we flip it. And then the other piece we have to look at is the +2. And then we know that because it's inside with the x, it's -2. So every x value is going to lose 2 units. So if I take this point here and move it 2, it'll be over here. And if I take this max point and move it backwards 2, I'm going to be on the y-axis. And if I take this x-intercept and move it back 2, I'm going to be about here. And then if I actually connect them together, it's going to be upside down. And when I look at the actual matching, what I'm going to look for is something that's upside down. It has an x-intercept close to the end there. It's at 1, 2, 3.5. And then almost 3, and then 1.5-ish on the y-axis. So let's see where that is. So on ABC, there's nothing that's upside down. Letter E is upside down. And it doesn't cross at, right here, it's at 1, so that's not really what I want. Go down a little bit more. So here I have 3.5, almost 2, and then almost 3. When I look at my graph, pretty much those are the points I picked out. So I would say that number 3 is letter G. Number 4, we again have two things going on. We need to look at flip, stretch, move. So I'm going to look at a flip. And all the x values are going to become their opposite. That's why there's a negative. So anywhere I see an x value, like this x-intercept is going to be the opposite. So I'm going to move it over to the other side. I have this x-intercept here. I'm going to move that over to the other side. I have this vertex here. It's at 2. Move it to the other side. And then I'll combine them together. And I have it flipped. And then if I look at the 2, it's 2 f of x is y, so it's doubled, so all the y values are doubled. So if I double 0, I stay 0. If I double 0, I stay 0. If I double this almost 2, then I get almost 4. So I'm going to go way up here and come back down. And when I look at it, I'm going to be almost to the end. I'm going to be a little over 1. And then at negative 2, I'm going to be up here towards 4. So let's look for that one. So A, B, and C aren't backwards. D isn't backwards, but F is. So let's look and see. I have this point that's almost 4. At 2, I'm almost up here at 4. And then I'm here at 1.5. So I would say that number 4 is letter F. We'll finish up the part 1 video on number 5. So let's look at that. It says divided by 2, and f of x is really y, so all the y values are divided by 2. So if I have a y value here, it's about 3, so I move that to about 1.5. Half of 0 again is 0. And if I take half of 1 3/4, we're going to go down here a little below 1. And then again, half of 0 is 0. So if I connect those together, I have a very flat graph. Now what are we going to look for? I'm going to look for something that crosses at a little over 1 and almost to the end. And then I'm going to look at something that's a little below 1 at 2. And then way over here, it's a little over 1.5. So if I look right down here at C, we have about 1.5. We have a little over 1. We have almost 1. And then we're almost at the end of the graph. So I would say number 5 is letter C. So go ahead and try video number 2 to see what the rest of 6, 7, 8, and 9 look like.